Hello, Tony. Welcome back again this week to talk about orchids. What are you going to do today?
Today, I think we'll try to explain how to repot a Phalaenopsis. That is something that typically people need to do every year or so. It benefits the plant greatly.
The orchids that we have here, I've had for about 3 years on the window ledge.
Often people will have them for up to 10 years and not repot them. But if you want to maintain the best plant health and try to push your plant to the point where it is the largest plant that it can be and you get the most flowers, repotting on, if not an annual, a biannual schedule would be a really good thing. You can kind of decide that when you see that a large portion of the roots have grown out of the pot, and often the plant will start to lean over. That plant should be facing up. If it's not facing up, then it probably needs to be repotted. And often, as the new roots grow out of the pot, very often the old roots will die. That's just how the plant works. And when that happens, you can often take a pot and water it and water it and water it, but you're not watering the plant because those roots that are alive, that are able to take up water, are outside the plant. So all you're watering is the dead material inside the pot. All right, folks, so we're going to take this orchid and we're going to think about repotting it. We're going to repot it. So what you have here is a plant that is very happy. I typically wouldn't repot an orchid that's in flower. I'd wait for it to go out of flower. But as they get older, you can see on this one, these old flower spikes are producing additional flower spikes because they weren't cut off. And that's fine. You can do that if you want. And so this plant is going to kind of be, it's going to have flowers almost perpetually, it appears. There's a few things that you need to do just to make things easier for yourself. Number one, the portions of these flower spikes that are no longer functional. This is turned yellow to brown. Then this back portion below here is green. So the green part's alive. The yellow to brown portion, the yellow portion is dying, and the brown portion is dead. So what I'm going to do is cut that there, okay? Then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to cut it here. Again, this is brown. A pair of scissors works great. You can see that just snapped that right off of there. Got one more little guy here that I'm going to clip off. And now I've got something that's really a lot easier as far as I'm concerned to manipulate. As you can see, it has a lot of roots all the way down through the pot. So what we're going to have to do in order to determine what size pot we're going to put this back in is take it out, clean the old media off as well as we can, and then determine what size pot is good to go with to repot it. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to squeeze it from the outside just to try and loosen things up a little bit. This is a nice clear see-through pot. I like see-through pots because you can see how well you're watering the roots when you water. And you can also get a sense of the root health by looking at it. In this particular case, again, you can see roots going around in circles here. You can see roots on the bottom coming out. Some of those are no doubt going to break when I take this out of the pot. This plant has just been watered, and I would do that prior to the time that I repotted because that helps to make the roots more pliable, and that helps to decrease the amount of breakage. I'm going to stick this pot in here. I'm just going to gently but firmly pull this, and I did break a root right there. I pulled this out of the pot. Now what you can see is these nice healthy roots, and there's a lot of bark in there. Now this is a high quality bark. This is and that's what we're going to repot in, as a matter of fact. You can repot in a lot of different medias. Probably the most common these days is called New Zealand sphagnum moss, and that's a very, very good media. I just happen to like bark. I have good results with it. It's easier in the home, I think, to use the bark. It holds water very well, but it drains very well also. If you're not familiar with moss, it can break down very quickly if you keep it too wet. Some of the inner portion of the bark has in fact started to break down, and what you get is it looks a little bit like mud. It's very small pieces, but again, this is still pretty good, not bad. Now, what am I doing here? What I'm doing is I'm searching out dead roots, and you can tell them easily. They're brown. They are often soft, but in this particular case, because this plant has been watered very well, meaning that it has not been overwatered so that things rot. You can see some of these dead roots. I want to get those out because eventually they're going to have the opportunity to become soft and simply add to the problem that could cause rot. Now, there's still a lot of potting media in there, but I've gotten rid of about as much of it as I think I safely can without damaging this plant. It's time for me to choose a new pot. Now, with Phalaenopsis, your best bet is to pot in as small a pot as you can get away with. The reason for that is the larger the pot, the longer it's going to hold moisture when it's watered. You don't, again, want it to hold moisture for too long. You want the roots to dry out rapidly. Here's what you do. Check. Now, really, that's a pretty good size. I have an even larger. I think this is probably 5-inch, and this is probably 6-inch. Let's see what this looks like. Now that, to be honest with you, is about the way I'd like it. There's a little bit of room. What are we going to put in this pot? I have a bag of styrofoam peanuts. You can buy them, in fact, at packaging stores. I have done that in the past when I ran out and needed a lot for a large potting job. But I also save it from materials that we get at home that come packed in styrofoam peanuts. You don't see them as often anymore as you used to, but they make absolutely fantastic drainage material. Plus, they're light. If you have a large plant and it's typically fallen over, you can use rocks, but that makes your pot very heavy. Now, typically with this bark, and this is a very good quality bark. Now, you're going to ask me what makes a good quality bark. This particular bark is from a tree called Pinus radiata in New Zealand. It is composted with limestone, but this is medium-sized bark chunks. Now, the composted with limestone means that you get an initial burst of magnesium to the plant, which is a very good thing. In addition to that, it doesn't break down as rapidly. And that's a good thing. You don't want it to break down because if it turns to mush, you may have a problem that you don't realize very quickly. So I'm going to take some of this. I would typically wet it, but I'm not going to do that here because it'll make a mess. I'm just going to put enough over the chips so that the bottom roots, just enough so that it covers up my chips. Now, I put chips in there to about that depth. That's going to give me really, really good drainage. Now I'm going to put this plant in here. I'm going to firmly push this down. Now, again, I'm trying not to break roots, but if I break some, so be it. It will happen. You don't want to put an immense amount of pressure on these, but you do want to get them to a point where you can load this pot up Keep the plant stable. When you get finished potting this, you want this plant to stay still. You don't want it moving around. Set it in its normal place and leave it there for a couple of weeks. And the bottom line is that those roots will heal, start growing, and we won't be moving it around, because the movement, the mechanical effect of the movement in the pot can cause a problem for the root tips. And the root tips, if they stop growing, sometimes Phalaenopsis roots branch, but it's not that frequent, to be honest with you. Now, fertilizer. I have Osmocote. Great stuff. I'm just going to put about a tablespoon of this. It's a time release. It's good for 4 months. If you put this on in spring, this will be good enough until next year. So I'm going to take about a tablespoon, more or less, whatever comes up in my hand here. And I'm going to drop it here in various places in the pot. And for the most part, it went in. Now, every time that you water, you're going to be fertilizing. So I'm going to take this plastic tie, and I'm going to tie this flower spike to this stake. We'll take this plant later on and water it, like I've shown you in the past, and it should be good for a couple of years here.
So thank you, Tony. Thank you very much for coming to Gwinnett County Public Library and telling us how to take care of orchids, how not to kill our orchids, and how to repot them. It's been terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I've really enjoyed it too, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Thanks.
Happy growing, folks.